A fitting way to close out the season for a floundering football team down in Miami. Jets drop another stinker, 9-6 to the Dolphins. No touchdowns for anybody today. Defense gives up a few field goals, and in all reality, who gives a damn? Season ended last week. This was just the final game on the schedule to finish out the string, and it's about getting ready for the offseason where Joe Douglas is the man under the microscope. Got to make it happen. Got to get a quarterback. This year, Jets fans, by and large, the preseason, the early season, it was all about play meaningful games in December. Go from doormat to playoff contender, and then maybe the playoffs after that. That's where the team is at. They were a doormat last year. They were a playoff contender this year. Up until last week, they still had a shot to make it. Didn't make it. Next year's got to be the next step. It's got to be playoffs. How does that happen? Get a damn quarterback. There's going to be a lot of options out there, but some more realistic than others, right? Will the Ravens let Lamar Jackson go? I find that unfathomable. Like, I can't allow myself to think that would really happen. If the Ravens get to that point where they're willing to deal him, the Jets should absolutely be, trying to get to the front of the line. Tom Brady, could you see him playing for the Jets? I don't think Tom Brady has an ounce of respect for the Jets organization. I think he would rather go back to New England or go to Vegas, wherever it may be. Don't see Brady coming to the Jets. I would like to think he's got enough disdain for Bill Belichick that he would like to come play him twice a year. But the only way I see that happening is if the Dolphins decide they're not going to roll the dice with Tua for another year with the concussion issues and they make a run at Brady. Of course, they don't have a first-round pick this year because they tampered to try to add Brady previously, and Brady was reportedly interested. So Brady to the Dolphins, Brady to the Pats, Brady to the Raiders, I would say all that's more likely than the Jets. Then you get to the more realistic guys. Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo. As I've said before, I'm all out on Garoppolo. You combine the money he's going to command with his injury history, and I want no part of it. I could see the Jets giving him $30, $35, $40 million, and then he gets injured week 4, out for 10 weeks. By the time he comes back, your season's over. I just can't see that happening. It's probably the most likely option at this point, given his history with his coordinator, with his staff, with this offense, with the Jets' need. But the injury history scares the hell out of me. Derek Carr, top of my list, to be honest, of realistic options. Derek Carr, if you can get him in here. But again, there are things that the Jets have to battle against. You've got the tax issue. Some people don't seem to think it's a big deal. If I'm making $40 million a year and I can go somewhere where I get taxed 0 versus getting taxed 30, 35, 40, 50%, that's a lot of money. That's nothing to, that's a lot of money to walk away from for no good reason. So Carr is a possibility. It's down to Joe Douglas to get somebody in here. You get to the next tier of guys. I've mentioned Baker Mayfield. I don't love the idea of Baker Mayfield, but as I've said before, and a lot of people have said, no matter which quarterback you go out and get, there will be concerns, with the exception of probably Brady and Lamar. Whoever gets those guys is going to feel pretty comfortable. Derek Carr, there's the weather concerns. He's only played a handful of pro games and, 37 below, and he's 0-7. So not a huge sample size, but not promising results. As I mentioned, Jimmy G with the injuries, that's a concern. Baker Mayfield, his makeup, his mental makeup, his attitude in New York, maybe not the best pairing. But what are you going to do? You're going to trade for Jameis Winston? Are the Saints going to keep Jameis Winston at this point? They sat him all year. That could be a destination for Carr. Do you call up the Titans? Do you try to make a run at Ryan Tannehill? So there are going to be a lot of options out there. The Jets, they might take a quarterback in this draft, but they're not taking a quarterback to start. If they take a quarterback, they're taking a mid-round guy, maybe even late-round guy, to develop or whatever, but you're not going to try to bring in a rookie when you're also trying to develop Zach Wilson. That's why a guy like Brady, Aaron Rodgers, look, I don't know what the situation is there. I'm reading some article saying that the Packers cap hit is going to be close to $70 million if they trade him. Is that even feasible? I don't see how that can be done at all. But there are going to be names out there floating around. The Jets are going to, Joe Douglas is going to have to inquire because it's got to be playoffs this year. It's got to be. And if it's not, Robert Saleh, I think, is absolutely gone. And Joe Douglas has a chance to hang on if he has another draft class like he just had, or close to it. It's probably unrealistic. It is unrealistic. to set the bar at, find 5 starters and multiple, rookie of the year candidates in one class. The Jets realistically, had Breece Hall been healthy, would have 3 legitimate rookie of the year candidates. 2 on offense in Hall and Garrett Wilson, and then of course on defense in Sauce Gardner. So, monster draft class. If Joe Douglas has anything close to that again, he's safe as far as I'm concerned. As I've said before, I've cited it before, Ozzie Newsome drafted 10 quarterbacks. I believe it was 10. Maybe it was 9. Even if it was 8. Ozzie Newsome drafted a ton of quarterbacks before he finally won. And he's viewed as one of the greatest GMs of all time. And the reason Ozzie Newsome was able to do that is because he was importing so much talent at other positions that the Ravens weren't stupid enough to let him go. They could understand, look, it'd be nice if we had a quarterback right now, but this guy's drafting Pro Bowlers every single year. And he also had some years where he didn't do so well. So this sort of insane standard we've set up of like you have to be near perfect as a GM. You can't have a couple of misses or you're gone. This isn't the real world. This is fantasy world. If owners fire GMs every time they had a subpar draft class or they missed on a first rounder, then no GM would last more than 3 or 4 years. Ozzie Newsome would have been fired a million before he became, he became the guy who had so much respect as a GM. So the playoffs are the next step. It's got to be. You can't have a drought this long and not show measurable progress from year to year. And the Jets this year, one thing I said prior to the season starting, and we saw it play out, I said this team was so bad last year that we could see them make enormous progress and still not have a great record. And we saw that this year. The Jets finish up 7-10, nothing to write home about, right? Doesn't get you the postseason. And of course, last year, they went 4-13, also, a terrible season. But the point differential, the Jets went from being a non-competitive dumpster fire every week, giving up, or their point differential last year was minus 194. They were outscored collectively by 194 points last year. This year, collectively, they were outscored by 20. That's 170 points better in point differential. And of course, a significant increase in wins to go with that. But this is what I mean by how far this team had to come to become good. This wasn't just a bad football team. We go back to the end of the McCagnon era. And as Robert Saleh said, that was expansion team level of talent. And now you've gone from that. And this is why Joe Douglas came on board and with no track record got a 6-year deal. I have no doubt that when Joe Douglas sat down with the Johnsons, he basically said, I'm not taking a 4-year contract. I'm not taking a 5-year contract. You're giving me nothing to work with. On a 53-man roster, you've probably got 6 or 7 NFL players. I'm going to have to ship out the guys that don't want to be here. Jamal Adams. Try to get something, try to salvage the Sam Darnold thing. Did that. And now, in a couple of years, the progress has been immeasurable in looking at what he started out with to where this team is now. And I've had these conversations. You follow me on Twitter. I had a conversation with somebody earlier tonight, and I've had them before. There are a lot of fans who don't like Joe Douglas, and they are desperate to pin Mike McCagnon's roster on him. And really, that roster was so bad that nobody was turning that around in a year or two. Nobody. So Joe Douglas has built a team that now, as I said, way more talent than what he started out with. They're going to clear some cap space this year. They're not going to have as many picks as they have in the past, so draft may not be quite as much fun. But Joe Douglas is going to attack this offseason. He's going to be aggressive as he has in years past. They have to address the O-line. Round 1's got to be offensive tackle. And he's got to get a quarterback. He's got to convince a quarterback to come here. Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Again, Lamar Jackson, who knows? Who knows what happens there? But what will not happen, and I promise you what will not happen, is the Jets go into next year with Zach Wilson as their starting quarterback day one. Not happening. He needs to not take a snap next year. If he does, it doesn't need to be anywhere near the first half of the season. That kid needs an offseason, and then he needs months of watching a veteran prepare and play to learn. This is where they are right now with Zach Wilson, unfortunately. But that's basically, as a team, you've got some great pieces in place. You've got amazing corners. You've got some really nice talent up front on defense. Who knows what happens with Mekhi Becton from here? A lot of people have given up on him. I'm not one of them. I get the frustration that he hasn't been on the field. But to me, and I've discussed this at length before, freak injury, no injury history prior to that, no way to predict that was going to happen. One injury cost him 2 years, terribly unfortunate, but he looks trimmed down, he looks svelte, he looks ready to go, or as if he will be ready to go. You get Becton back, you get AVT back, you take another tackle in round one. Breece Hall. This team is so close. Doesn't mean it'll happen. Anything can happen. But right now, you look at this 53-man roster, you look at the projected starters, you get those guys on the field with somebody like Carr or a healthy Garoppolo, and this team is walking into the playoffs next year. Walking in, easily. Will it happen? Will they get that quarterback? Will that quarterback stay healthy? No idea. We'll have to wait and see. Plenty of draft talk. Me, from here until draft day, it's nothing but prospect watching. And I've been doing a ton of it, as you know from Jet Nation Live, Dylan Terman and myself, we've been watching and talking about prospects all year. But now that's 100% of the focus from this point forward, because NFL season's done as far as I'm concerned. And the offseason is here, folks. Joe Douglas has his work cut out for him. Got to take that next step. Got to hit the postseason next year. And hopefully it's a good one. Hopefully a fun one. And you can only hope and pray to the football gods that the draft is anything like it was this year when the Jets are on the clock next year. That'll do it for me now. We will have more Thursday night. Myself and Dylan Terman. We will welcome Chris Schubert of the Draft Network, and we will talk plenty of draft because that's gonna be the hot topic for the coming weeks and months. That'll do it for this one. Have a good one, Jets fans.